Welcome to another episode of the Dear Souls podcast. Today I'm honored to have Jerry Pannone. He's an accomplished author, musician, and educator. Jerry holds a master's degree in music from San Francisco State University and has studied at the Ali Akbar Khan College of North India Music. He has also composed ballads, choral works, jazz pieces, and scored a short film on Alzheimer's disease titled The Screwdriver. With over 30 years of experience teaching, Jerry has made significant contributions to music education, earning numerous awards, including the San Francisco Symphony Agnes Albert Award and the California Music Educators Association's Lifetime Achievement Award. His interest in philosophy, psychology, and metaphysics further enrich his work and insights. Join us as we explore Jerry's journey and his thoughts on education, music, and personal growth. Welcome to the show, Jerry.
Thanks so much, Jacqueline. I'm very happy to be here.
You're welcome. I'm so honored and so excited for this podcast. I know that we've had our little pre-interview and we were talking for like an hour. And I was like,
Right.
wait a second, this could have been an interview
Pre-interview.
already.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
really
right.
excited to have you here. And I actually read your book, just
Thank
about
you.
everything. I'm about 2 or 3 pages into chapter 3 because
Okay.
it took a little longer than I usually expected. But I love the book. I think it's so cool and it has so much great information and insights. And also, I want to say thank you for writing a little note for
Oh,
me here. I
so
am so
happy to do.
honored. Thank you so much. It was so beautiful. Um,
Thank you.
you're welcome. So I wanted to ask you, Jerry, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into music and your education and what inspired
Sure.
you to pursue these fields?
Yeah, thank you, Jacqueline. Well, everyone's childhood is formative in many ways, right? It's the idea that, yes, we're growing up physically, and along with that, we're scooping up everything we can see as a baby and a little
Right.
child, and we're just absorbing everything like a sponge. And some of those experiences are positive, and others are, what can we say? They could be traumatic, they can be negative, all kinds of things that come into our little brains and emotions that start to form us as a person. And for me, at least, I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional family. My father left us when we were four. I was four. My sister was an infant. And that was a traumatic experience. And in looking back many years later, of course, it has left its own scars
Yeah.
about trust, about abandonment. All these things we're talking about this stuff today, but in those days, back when I was a kid, people, number one, didn't talk about it. You
Yeah.
just lived your life. You grew up, you lived your life, and everybody had their different issues. But there was a feeling, and I think because of what those generations went through, well, we went through a depression, a major depression. We went through a world war where millions of people died and horrible things happening. What are you complaining about?
Yeah,
You don't have
exactly.
anything to complain about. And so there was that, just stiff upper lip, just grin and bear it. That's what you need to do. And so I think that's the way most of the people in my generation grew up. You might have gone through your traumas and childhood difficulties, but you just felt, okay, that's life. You just
Right.
take it. And you don't dive into those problems until much later, often, or never for many people, of course. And they live with
Yeah.
these things that are going on. They don't understand why they're happening. They might have a personality that's difficult to deal with. They don't know why that is. They don't know why these things have happened that cause this acting out or cause this painful reaction to others or to themselves. Oftentimes, it goes way back to when you're a little child, of course. And so those things happened to me, and it took a long time to kind of sort stuff out. I loved music, and my mother, after her first divorce, married a fellow with 3 kids, and he had gone through something similar, came out of the
Right.
military, and his wife was running around, and they had 3 kids, and so he got a divorce. My parents got together, or I should say, they got together, my mom and
Wow.
him, and we had a serviceable family, put it that way. You know,
Okay.
we kind of, there wasn't a lot of love, but it functioned. We
Right.
went to school. The family functioned. But like I say, it was far from the Leave It to Beaver family, with the picket fence and the
Yeah.
nice surroundings, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So actually, I couldn't wait to leave home. I knew when I was 18, I was out of there. And
Mm.
it was that feeling like I wanted to be free. And this sense of freedom, started
Mhm.
out when I was a little kid. I just, somebody was always telling me what to do. And, of course, that's
And
natural,
no,
right?
no, don't tell me what to do. I know what I need to do.
I said, yeah, I got to get out of here. That's what I got to do. And
Um,
so, that just stuck with me. And as soon as, I could, I left home. And again, I started music when I was a young kid. And I loved that because it kind of became an escape. There was always
mm,
arguing going on in the house. And I would go into my room and I'd practice and I could escape the arguments. It was a way of getting away from those things. But in the back of my head, I just wanted to get out of there. And so,
that's so funny.
I
I could so relate to that with you because by the
oh,
time I think I was 15, 16
uh-huh.
almost, I was like, I'm getting the heck out of here because my parents got divorced when I was 13, like just
Oh,
turning
sure.
13. And
Yeah.
it was a huge shock for me because I
Oh
thought my
boy.
family was perfect. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I never saw them fight. I never saw any problems. It was like a big old family. I'm from Cuba, so we're all
Oh,
together
sure.
all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I got this amazing family. And then here comes my mom and my dad saying, we're getting a divorce. And I'm like, what the heck? So
Surprise.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, surprise. So of course I rebelled. I even dropped out of high school because I got into it with a teacher,
All right.
math teacher. Yeah, she was like, you don't do math that way. You need to go back to Cuba. And I was like, oh no,
Ah,
we're not doing this shit. Sorry. So, I can relate in so many ways, but I didn't do
sure.
what you did. You went into the military and you got into the music bands. See,
Right.
I got
Right.
in music too. I was a drummer and I
I
got
was a
kicked out of
drummer. I was
yeah,
a drummer
see,
too. Yeah, we're
cool.
both
That is so
drummers.
cool.
Okay.
See, in junior high, in seventh grade, I remember like I loved drums so much because I grew up with cousins that were in the music
Oh,
industry
sure.
too. Yeah. So I got kicked out of drum school and I was given a trumpet. And I'm like, this is
That's it.
not for me.
Yeah.
So I kind of lost it there, but I left my house and I really just kind of did my own thing. And, I managed
Right.
businesses and stuff like that. But I could so relate. Like, you just wanted to get the heck out of that house because
No,
nothing made sense
right.
anymore.
Yeah, no,
Wow.
absolutely. So we have similar backgrounds in that.
Yeah.
The only difference in my case, I knew people weren't happy and they were, only staying together because it was good for the children in their minds that they would
Exactly.
stay. But the funny thing, eventually, after all the kids left home, they kind of finally got along, and
Hmm.
this was fascinating.
That's funny.
And I think because of the stepchildren and their sense, neither one were really loving people. And my mother wanted to be, but she felt she couldn't treat us differently than the other
Mm.
kids, than her stepchildren. So the only way she could deal with it was kind of to withdraw a little bit from being an affectionate person, because the other kids were a little older and they, you know with young girls or boys, especially in early adolescence, you
Yeah.
have the girl attached to the dad. It's wants to be mommy, daddy's little girl, and the
Yeah.
boys attached to the mom, wants to be mommy's little boy, right? So
Yeah.
those are archetypes. This is where the Oedipal electric complex comes from. All of
Right.
that. They're complexes because they're real. They're
Mm-hmm.
functioning within life, and the biologists and psychologists will explain why and all that. And that's all well and good, but it doesn't help you when you're in the family and you have the
Yeah.
conflicts going on. And so I think that forced her to be colder, because
Mm.
the other kids didn't accept her in a way like mommy. This was this woman who came into their father's life and they had to just put up with it. And for me,
Right.
to some extent, it was the same way,
Mm.
although I was a little bit younger, but I saw that was coming on. And so it's really hard for those kids to meld together unless the parents are very enlightened, right? They can
Yeah.
reach out to the other one and hug them and embrace that child who isn't their blood relation.
Right.
And, it's the old saw, blood is thicker than water. So it's why do we feel that? Because genetically, there's a connection there through the genes. So
Yeah.
it takes a really pretty advanced person to spiritually advanced to
Yes.
embrace that other kid who is not their own, right? So
Yeah.
this is the way the world is going, though, and it's the way the
Mhm.
world is meant to be. We are supposed to love each other.
That is
There's all
true.
that thing, there's a reason for it. It's like Jesus said, love your neighbor, but also love your enemy. So that's a big one, right? This is a big, somebody's bad mouthing you and you're supposed to love that person.
That's
But
hard.
it's
That's very,
hard.
very hard.
Yeah,
I
it's really
I know
hard.
because I've gone through it in this past year, a little over a year now. I've gone into my spiritual journey a lot more in depth because I got very sick to the point that I almost
Right.
died.
Oh,
And then
no.
before that, yeah, before that, almost 4 years this October 31st, we had a horrible car accident in Florida that our car flipped and everything,
Oh,
ripped off
wow.
on out the back window. So it was very horrendous stuff, it was horrifying. And, my husband had neck surgery, 27
Oh,
staples,
wow.
and nothing happened to me. And I wasn't wearing a seatbelt.
Gee.
I had a crystal that was made for protection in the car, and all I felt was a guided energy that told me, hold on to the handle, put your feet on the dashboard, and just let whatever happen gonna happen. And I just kind of like left. Like after the second time the car
Right.
flipped, I left. And I remember coming back when the car hit the tires hit the floor, and I was just like, am I alive? And I
Well,
look over and my husband is all full of blood. And I'm
oh,
just
wow.
like, so, it was crazy because I went through that experience, but I had to really I got a lot of trauma from that, from losing our dog, from having to help him heal for 5 weeks in Florida in Orlando at his brother's house. I never took care of my health. I never took care of my mental health, especially. Opened up a business a couple of months later, a vacation rental and, investment firm and stuff like that. And then within, I think, a year and a half, working every single day and just not paying attention to myself, no self-care, no self-love, nothing. My mental health just kept going down, down, down into severe
Hmm.
depression. And finally, when my grandmother passed away, I think it was a year after the accident, I went downhill. Like I went into this severe depression. I'm like, I don't want to live in this world anymore. This world sucks really bad. I don't
Right.
get it. I don't understand why we all have to suffer, why everything has to be like the way it is. And I just went into this really crazy space. And I
Sure.
kept going in there and going in there. And I kept getting like, we will go to psychics, we'll go to different people to get, information. Like, why was I so sick? I had vertigo, tinnitus,
Oh, wow.
fibromyalgia. I mean, you name it. I was aging super fast. All of a
Wow.
sudden, like I
Sure.
had wrinkles everywhere, age spots. I'm like, what is going on? But guess what? Through all that, I now realize through my spiritual journey that we create our own suffering. I was doing all that to myself.
Sure.
You
Of
know what I
course.
mean?
Yeah.
So now I've learned through the spiritual that we have to be more loving and compassionate, no judgment. Everybody is on their own journey. Everybody's going through their own stuff. And we have to learn to hold that love and that space for those people. Even
Yeah.
if we don't agree, even if they piss us off, even if,
No, of
you
course.
gotta
Of
do your
course.
own work,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and this is the wisdom of the
Mm,
spiritual journey. Love listening to psychologists and
Mm.
neuroscientists and all of these folks, but the truth exists at all levels of existence. And sometimes we cover it up with verbiage, we cover it up with a lot of words and
Mhm.
vocabulary. And other times we can be ignorant about the truth at this level. And it doesn't matter as long as we see the truth from our own lens, because we're all
Exactly.
individuals and we
Yeah.
just have to accept one another for being
Mhm.
individuals on our own path. But
Yeah.
we need to also see that truth, the truth in the
Mm.
other person, and see how the universe is helping them evolve in their way,
Exactly.
not in my way, in their particular way. And
Exactly.
if we can learn to appreciate that and say, wow, isn't this wonderful? It's like all different types of
Yeah.
flowers, right? This flower is blossoming in
Mm.
its own way. It's not the rose, it's not the
No.
daffodil, it's something else. And it's blossoming in its own way to become the most beautiful it can possibly be. So
Yeah.
to me, we're all that way. I mean, some people are pursuing academics, others are the arts, others are social
Yeah.
sciences or agriculture. But to see that person blossoming in their particular way, as the truth reached you about your
Yeah.
suffering and how you were actually creating it. Now we know pain, right? I mean, somebody
Yeah.
hits you on the thumb with a hammer, it hurts. we're not
Yeah.
we're not going to joke about that. There are physical realities because we're in a
Mhm.
physical body, but we can feel pain, but we don't have to feel long-term suffering. The long term suffering is something we are opening ourselves up to.
Yeah.
And like you went through, and I've gone through, and billions of people go through,
Yeah.
we have to figure out in our own lives at what point is this pain unavoidable? And
Yeah.
at what point am I embracing it and making it my own? And that to me
Mhm.
is, it's a tough one, but that's the learning experience, right? That's the school
It
we're
is. It
in.
is.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
So,
It's like Sadhguru or Yogi. He says, "I'm not the body, and I'm not even the mind."
right.
And that is so true. And it's crazy because this is coming from so many thousands of years of us being programmed a certain way to believe certain things, even in religion. And it's funny because I was raised Catholic and in shamanism. My grandmother,
Hmm.
she was into shamanism and all that stuff. But even that, when I got into my 20s, the part of shamanism, because I never really cared for religion. Like they wanted me to do the
Right.
communion and all that. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Why would I want to do that? I was always so rebellious against those things because I felt there was something that wasn't true there. As a child, I always felt that. I even
Oh,
asked
sure.
questions like, who's God and where did God come from and who's God's parents? And they were like,
Yeah.
oh, you don't ask those questions. And I'm like, why not? Me, I'm such a
Right.
curious person, right? But yeah, with the shamanism in my mid-20s, I got completely away from it and I started questioning things. I went to non-denominational churches. I went into like different religions and nothing made sense to me. Really. It was like a little bit of truth and then the rest was like fear-based and all these different things. And I was like, no, I want the truth. And I kept searching for that truth. But then I got so away from all that because of the programming, because of my own mental health that I never really understood how much trauma I was stacking on top of,
Sure.
the traumas. And by the time I was 39 years old, I was done. I was tired. I didn't know what to believe. I didn't know what was real. I didn't know what was going to be of my life. As I got
Hmm.
older, and it's just, thank God I met my husband, and yeah, we went through heck and back, but it's gotten me to where I'm at right now. This spiritual
Right.
journey I have committed to it so much. I mean, even I committed 5 or 6 months ago that I was just going to stay on this path and that I was going to just know my truth, that comes in and I was
Right.
going to
Sure.
connect to my higher self and my ancestors and everything. And I was, I would pretty much mentor myself. And that's been my journey. YouTube has been my biggest teacher. The people that
Hmm.
I follow,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
that,
Sure.
yeah, I learned so much from them. And every time I hear something, I'm like, oh my God, I know that. I know that
Hmm.
to be truth. And my husband's like, well, how do you know? And I said, it's a knowing. I don't need a book. I don't need confirmation. I know it inside of me.
Yeah.
That's true.
And the idea of knowing comes in
Well,
many forms, right? It's a,
yeah.
there's, you can get academic books and they'll list the ways of knowing. There's
Mm-hmm.
logical, scientific ways of knowing. There's intuitive ways of knowing.
Well,
There's experiential. We only know how to ride a bike by riding a bike. We don't know it by
exactly.
talking about it. Yeah, and relationships are the same way. You only know how to deal with a relationship in a relationship. You can't get a chalkboard and say, "Well, here's how we deal with it." No, because you have to actively be engaged in it. And your path is beautiful because it
Amen.
said you were pretty awake early on that there was something different. You couldn't just receive this from the
Yeah.
pulpit on down, tell you the truth, and you had to
Yeah.
believe it because that's the way, huge number of people are. They believe the truth is coming from that pulpit down to me, and
Mm,
I'm, accepting of it, and that's the way it is. But not everybody is like that, and not everybody
yeah.
is destined to be that accepting of just because some authority figure tells you you're going to
Mm,
get it. And to
yeah.
me, that's a more advanced soul in the sense that there's something the matter here. Okay, I get what you're saying, but I need to experience something within me to confirm that these
Yep.
things are true. And I mean, this is what Buddha said. He said, don't take
Mm-hmm.
my word for it. Find out for yourself if what I'm saying
Exactly.
is true. Yeah. So all of this stuff to me, a representative of layers of awareness. We reach a certain layer of awareness where we confirm to ourselves that what we've experienced is real. Is this thing real? And those spiritual experiences you've had, of course, are real. Now, in all of them, we can go deeper and deeper and deeper, right? We can keep
Yeah.
getting deeper. But we know that this feeling we've had is important and it's real. And so we might not
But
be able to dig it all apart and be able to, give somebody a definition of how this came together. I mean, it's like a computer. You don't have to know how a computer works to use a computer, right?
yeah.
I mean, you get online and you do some word processing and you learn how to do that, but you don't have to know how all the chips in the computer work to do it. And to me, it's the same kind of thing. We don't know how or have to know how the universe works in order to say love is important.
Yeah.
Okay? And I know how to love a person, and that's far more important than know the mechanics of synapses in your brain to
Yeah.
make love happen, right? And so I feel like, you have experienced this and you're an advanced soul because you recognized very early that this was about a spiritual journey. And many people my age still don't get it. They don't they
Yeah.
don't understand we are on a spiritual journey. And what's the phrase? We're spiritual beings having a human experience, right? That's a
Yeah.
traditional
Mm-hmm.
thing. And it's true because the more you begin to become aware of your inner self, the more
Mm-hmm.
obvious it becomes. This is about, figuring out relationships. It's figuring out my relationship with my spirit and
Yeah.
and how that acts through me. So yeah, no, I think we're all on this journey, and
Yeah.
we can say, for example, that you're already there. But that's our inner self is already there.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
pulling the strings to get our brain a little closer to that realization, right?
Yeah. Me.
That
Yeah.
yes, I'm there, but I have to realize that there-ness, that oneness with
Mm-hmm.
existence. And that's what we're here for, to go through the process of doing it. So yeah, I think it's all beautiful. It's absolutely
But and
beautiful.
I've learned that everything is beautiful because, and me looking back now with what I know and understand in the whole spiritual realm, everything is spiritual. And it's funny because I always knew stuff not, I guess I had an awareness, but I wasn't really conscious of it. I just kind of like subconsciously knew I had these feelings and these things. And then somehow along the way, through my parents' divorce, getting pregnant early, getting abandoned by, my son's
Right.
father. And then,
Sure.
so many things happened after that, that it was hard for me to kind of like mentally put it together. I didn't know that I was suffering from postpartum depression for years and years and years. So, back then, that wasn't a thing. Mental health wasn't
Right.
really a thing.
Right.
It's more like stop crying, get up, keep going, like tough love,
That's
right?
it. Tough love.
And then that is
Exactly.
so unhealthy because you literally don't know how to have the right tools to deal or cope with certain things that pop up. And like for me, my coping mechanism became going out and dancing. I love to dance salsa.
Sure.
That was my thing.
Absolutely.
And then it was, let's go out and drink, let's go to the bars, or let's go like, maybe smoke some
Sure.
pot or something. It was kind of like doing those things and not knowing like where I was headed to,
Yeah.
but the more
Right.
I kept, kind of like not wanting to deal with things because I didn't know how to, my best way was to like, oh, I'm just gonna go out. I'm not gonna deal with it. You kind of
Yeah.
like
No.
push it away,
Yeah.
and
It's the
that
escape. It's escape,
is
right?
the escape. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
and escape of music and dance, if we use it as an escape, it's a
Uh-huh.
beautiful art form
It
that
is.
transcends escape, of course. But
Uh-huh.
that idea, so many of us often use it as an escape, as I did when I was young with music,
Yeah. Yeah.
before I really understood it. But, I was playing in nightclubs for decades. I was
Oh,
on the
wow.
road, with bands. I was traveling around the road with bands, and this is what I did. I played for you guys, the dancers who would
Mhm.
go out there, and with Latin bands who played
Yeah,
mambos
and
and
that life I know
salsa.
is not easy because I
Oh
used to
no,
hang
no,
out with
yeah,
artists and stuff, and I know it's
yeah,
not easy. If you're not really strong in your conviction of what
right.
you're wanting, you could get lost as well.
You get lost and maybe drown, in terms of the
Yeah.
lifestyle, and that's why I decided when I got married that I couldn't continue that life because a
Um,
family is so difficult to have a family survive, that lifestyle. It's very, I mean, I needed to be home to help raise my children.
so you chose your
And,
family.
you know,
Yeah,
yeah,
that was good.
yeah,
You chose your
yeah. So
family. That was
I
good.
picked that. Yeah, and I got into teaching, and that was the best thing that happened to me. I had a wonderful
That's
school
beautiful.
where I taught music, and
Talk to
it
me
was
a little bit
fabulous.
about, yeah, talk to me a little bit about the San Francisco State University and the Ali Akbar Khan College of North India, the music. How did that shape your music and how you taught and all that stuff?
Yeah. Well, when my first wife and I decided to get married, she had an education, but I did not. I didn't, she came from a family where everybody was a doctor or a lawyer or something,
Oh, well, okay.
and they, valued education very highly. Well, that put me in a spot where I had been on the road with bands, I had been in the army. So I had to make a decision about it. Like
Um,
I knew, if I continue what I was doing, that marriage wasn't going to last. And so I decided, okay, let me go back to school, study music in college, and get a teaching credential so I could have a more stable relationship with
right.
my family. And so I went to San Francisco State, got a teaching credential in music, and then started teaching in different schools, and finally ended up at the School of the Arts in San Francisco. And so it was a fabulous school. In the meantime, I had gone to the Ali Akbar Khan School of Indian Music because I was
Mm.
always fascinated. And this is the funny thing, it brought me to the guru stuff, the
Oh,
idea of spiritual teachings from an Eastern perspective. And
mm-hmm.
so I studied that music for a couple of years. And then when I got into teaching, it was also a time when, in the 1970s, when, the Eastern religions were becoming popular and gurus were becoming popular. And so I felt a draw because I had I had, like you, given up Catholicism because there was just too rigid, and
Yeah,
again, everybody telling me what to do in that way. And so, but I still had this inner need. I had this inner need for
yeah.
development and spirituality. So, ended up being with a guru for 13 years, my wife and I both. He had his
Oh,
particular problems, but for 13 years, I learned quite a bit. And, you
yeah.
know, uh, our life went on, our kids were being raised. And that's how it came out of music in a way. And that there
Mm.
was an unfolding. What I think is an important principle to realize, everything is in a state of evolution. We as human beings are evolving. The planet is evolving. The cosmos is evolving. It's
We're all evolving.
unfolding. Yeah, we're all evolving, and that spiritual evolution is evolution. That's exactly what it is. When we talk about becoming aware, we're evolving as human beings, as spiritual beings. And that idea that everything is doing that is
Mm.
a kind of a beautiful realization. We think, because everything around us, even the most ignorant person that we feel is so ignorant, there's something happening. There's a little bit of light, peeking
Mhm.
in. It might be not for us to discover, but when we realize that the magnificence of existence is not letting anyone stay behind, it's pulling us all along, right? In a way
Yeah,
that we might not individually see. Seeing is happening. The seeing
yeah.
is making that happen with every little bug, every animal, every human being.
We're all
We're
connected.
all
Energetically,
evolving.
we're
We're
all
all
connected.
connected.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And if I'm evolving, then whoever I'm with has to be evolving, because
yeah.
the tentacles, right? The little
Mhm.
spider webs that go everywhere, and the little roots, they're
Yeah.
touching everyone and everything. So I'm being pulled along by forces, and I'm helping to pull along others. And so we're all in this wonderful web of connection that's all floating in a direction. And a lot of people say it's chaotic. You see the wars in the world and all this. Well,
Mhm.
one part of the web might be shaking because of the wind
Yeah.
or something else, but the rest of the web is intact and it's still
Mhm.
pulling it along. It's just for that period of time in the world of time, right?
I know.
That this appears to be happening. But in reality, it's the metaphor is often the wave. You're a wave in the ocean, and
Yeah.
that wave is moving, and it appears to be an individual wave. But in fact, it's connected to the entire
It's
ocean.
connected.
And if
Yeah.
it folds and disappears, you're still the ocean. And so, to me, that's what's absolutely wonderful about this. And it really is just up to us to allow ourselves to
No.
awaken to this.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it doesn't mean we're not going to have any problems in life. That's just part of existence,
Well, it's
right?
the way
But
you
I
want to
think
look at it, right?
yeah,
Yeah, it's the way you want to look
yeah,
at life. And
absolutely.
it's like for me and my husband, we don't watch the news. We'll have maybe, let's say,
Yeah,
one of his brothers or somebody say, "Hey, did you hear what happened?" And we're like, "No, what
right.
happened?" And they're like, "Blah blah blah blah." And we're like, "Oh, okay, cool." And they're like, "But
Yeah,
you're not gonna be scared, or no? Why would I want to dive into that when I'm living such a great life over
no.
here? Why am I? Why
Yeah,
am I? Can I control the war? Can I control what's happening over there? Can I control fake news? Because 95% of
no.
what's on the news is fake, and it's just
Yeah,
to put fear
right,
in
right,
people. I'm like, do
right.
I want to? I have a choice. Do I want to watch that and allow that to affect my life? Or do I say, oh, yeah, I'm aware that's happening, but that's not where I want to be. I'm gonna go over
Yeah,
here and I'm gonna live this beautiful life and I'm gonna focus on the beauty of life and the positive. Because guess what? I personally
yeah.
live through darkness a lot, and I don't want to be in the darkness anymore. I don't want to be
No,
there. Yeah,
right.
I want
I
to be
mean,
happy.
if Yeah, no, if you're walking down the street and you see a pile of garbage, you don't stop and stare at it, do you? It's just a pile of
No,
garbage and you're going to keep
yeah,
going. I think the same is true. And it's important, I think, to remember it's not that we don't care about other
yeah,
people who are suffering in a war or anything, but we have to be realistic about what we can
yeah,
actually do. And,
exactly.
what part of our consciousness is appropriate to give to that particular thing, or else we'll wrap our whole lives in suffering we can do nothing about. And
Exactly.
and it's important to say, okay, I can give some money to a cause and I'll
Yeah.
write a check, I'll do this and try to help, but I can't spend all my time worrying about everything in the world
Mhm.
that is happening because I only have, this much of a brain and this much of a body to give to certain things. So because we're in a body, we don't have
Uh-huh.
that capacity to help everything. But because our awareness is connected to everything, there's an aspect of our
Yeah.
awareness which is handling that, but it's not
Exactly.
my conscious awareness. It's that part of me that is there, because
Uh-huh.
I'm one with that person suffering, but I don't have the capacity to live in that
In
person's
that.
suffering.
Yeah.
They have to deal with that one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those
And
sufferings,
and even though,
sorry.
yeah,
Those sufferings
no,
create
I'm just saying,
sicknesses. Yeah. I mean, when you suffer like that
of
and you just
course, yeah,
allow those things, those darkness, all those things to come through, guess what? You're gonna get sick. That's where cancer comes from. That's where all these other diseases come from. It's from our stress levels. It's from things that we go through, traumas. It's all that stuff. So why choose to be sick? I'd rather be healthy,
yeah. Well,
right?
yeah, at least to the best of your ability, right? Because
Exactly.
something will happen, like the accident happened. And we
Yeah.
don't know, in those cases, why did it happen? You knew for a moment that you left. What
Yeah.
your consciousness left while you were in the midst of this car turning over and doing these things. Your consciousness was protected. It
Yeah.
left the scene and then you came back, of course, your consciousness came back,
No,
but it
yeah.
was almost like I wanted to get out of here. I wanted to leave home because it was painful. So
Yeah.
I said, I'm out of here. And your consciousness, in a sense, does the same thing. This is painful. I'm
Hmm.
out of here. You know,
Exactly.
and I can remember an incident where I was and my friend, we were driving to a playing job, and it was on a military base in
Uh-huh.
California. It was an Air Force base, and all of a sudden, I saw this police car pull up next to me, and then it was on a freeway. Police car pulls up next to me, and then drifts back again. And then he pulls up again, and I'm watching the speed limit. Boy, I'm not going to go a
Uh-huh.
mile over the speed limit. So he pulls up again, and he pulls over. And I thought, okay, he's back. But all of a sudden, the red light goes on behind me. And I said, I don't know what we did. And, I don't think we did anything. So I pull over and I'm waiting for the cop to come alongside the door. And he
Uh-huh.
doesn't. All of a here, I hear I had a truck at the time, a van. And all of a sudden, this bang, bang, bang goes on the back of the van and said, get out with your hands up. And I said, I don't think this is a traffic stop. And so
Oh no.
my, my friend and I, we both get out our cars with our hands up. And the cop comes around, and I look behind me, and there are 6 police cars
Oh
behind
my
me.
God.
And all of them had their guns out, pointed at us. And he, says, put your hands behind you. And he puts handcuffs on me, and the other guy puts handcuffs. And the minute I saw all those police cars and the guns out, my
Hmm.
consciousness left. It went like 50 feet away, and I was looking at this scene happen
Oh my
because if I was
God.
going to get, if I was going to get blown away, I didn't want to be there when it happened. In a similar way where your consciousness left and didn't want
Hmm.
to be there, right? So,
No.
I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist. This may have been some protective thing that your brain does. It could have been. I'm not going to say it was magic or astral projection or anything else, but I
Or I
knew
had
I,
a walk-in. I had a walk-in
yeah,
come in and
exactly.
protect me.
Yeah. So there's that sense that you don't want to be there because of what's going on. And in a funny, more material way, it's like, wait a minute, I don't want to be in the middle of this war. This has got nothing to do with my existence right now. It's got some distance to do, but I don't want to be in it right now. And
Exactly.
in that same way, why would I want to plug up my consciousness with all this negativity when I could be doing some good, and
Right.
enjoying life in a way that I'm capable of, because I'm simply not capable of doing anything about that situation. So why would I waste my time, the little time I've got left on the
Right.
planet, by spending it all worrying about this other stuff? I mean, people are different. They could say prayers, if that's their thing, put that energy into that. They could send some money, they can do those things. But you don't want to wrap up your entire consciousness in this,
Yeah.
because it's only, like you say, with physical illness, it'll make you sick. It'll
Yeah.
make you really upset. And if you watch the news all the time, it sure will make you upset, right? Because that's
Yeah.
a constant barrage you're receiving of both factually flawed information you're getting often, and also
No, no.
just of the emotional intensity that it brings with it.
Yeah.
And just like, I mean, in a simple but similar way, where you're escaping going into a nightclub and just getting your mind totally occupied with what's going on there. Well, you do the same thing with
Mm-hmm.
the news, right? We go into the
Yeah.
news and our mind gets sucked into it, and we escape who we are, who we truly are. We're actually escaping into that tube to
Well,
be
we're feeding into
distracted.
that energy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
we're feeding
feeding
into
into the
those kinds of
energy.
energies. Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.
And that's not
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go a little bit back into your whole music career. I want to. I was reading your book, and you Carlos Santana, and that was actually one of my
Hmm.
favorite artists.
Sure. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that experience, because I thought it was
Yeah.
so cool. So just a little bit
Yeah.
about that. I
Yeah.
know.
Sure. Well, Carlos, Deborah, his wife,
Oh
and
man.
me and my wife were in the same spiritual, or on the same spiritual path with the guru that we were on.
Okay.
And this guru liked to collect famous people, so he felt if he collected famous people, he would become more popular. Of
Denise.
course, right?
Okay.
The
Of
guru
course.
has Carlos, and he has other and so yeah, it's a collection game in a way.
Okay.
Well, Carlos and I knew each other, and anyway, he was at a point in his career, he was changing some of the members in his band, and I was teaching at a school that was a real headache for me in the beginning
Mm-hmm.
of my teaching career. I had 175 kids a day, or sorry, me, 275 a day in bands, huge bands.
Wow.
And I never even got to know all the kids' names in the bands because there were so many of them. And I just wanted to go back to playing. And that was
Right.
one of those bumps in my family life,
Mm.
and my wife, God bless her, she said, well, if this is what you want, then go ahead and do it. And so I knew Carlos, and, he was looking for another drummer. And so a friend of mine and I, we went to his house one day. This was in Marin County in California. And we played with him, just Carlos and us. And so he was a bass player, my friend. And we played, a couple hours together. And I thought I played fairly well, and the drummer that was leaving, in my mind, at least, I was just as good as he was. So why
Right.
not, because Carlos we were all on the same spiritual path,
Mhm.
why not get with him? And it would help us in a way to kind of stay straight on the road, if we're on the
Exactly.
road playing. And so I thought, in my mind, I was rationalizing these reasons why, well, I should go with Carlos.
Mhm.
And so later he didn't pick me. He picked another drummer who wasn't part of this. And, I was very disappointed. And
Mm.
I thought, this was supposed to happen in my life. Yeah, I had it lined up in my brain
Oh,
that
yeah.
this made,
Mhm.
I was convinced this even made spiritual sense, because I could have gone on the road. We would have enhanced the guru's fame and all this business. And, you
Exactly.
know, I had it all
You had
lined
it
up
all
in my
figured
brain.
out in your
Well,
head.
yeah, I
Did you ever
I
find
had it
out why he
figured
didn't
out,
take you? Did you ever figure out why he didn't take you?
No,
Did you guys talk about it?
well, like we never talked about it. We were
Okay.
still friendly and all that business, but we never spoke about it. But I also know he was auditioning a lot of people, different people.
Mm.
And so about a month or two later, I got a call from a friend in San Francisco because I was depressed. I was almost in the middle of a midlife crisis at that point. And this friend said, "Well, look, they're looking for a director, a music director at the School of the Arts, which was a famous school where they auditioned kids to get into either dance, theater, music, visual arts. It was a wonderful place, where kids
Mm.
went because they really wanted to be there.
Is
And
that the San
so,
Francisco
um,
school?
School of the Arts, yeah,
The
it's
arts, yeah.
changed its name to the San Francisco Ruth Asala.
Okay.
She was a famous artist, and they finally named it after her. But this opening came up, and I decided to apply for it, and I got the job. And my life changed dramatically. I had these wonderful kids that I was teaching. That was just a thrill for me to teach, and they were dedicated and they were wonderful musicians. And I realized that's why I didn't go with Santana. That's why
Mm.
it was only
The
15 minutes from
universe had
my
another
house.
plan for
I
you.
could,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And they're not going to
Yeah.
transfer me. I was there for almost 30 years. And
Wow.
I watched my kids grow up. I could help with the home and all of that. And I had a phenomenal group of kids to work with. And so it took me a while to realize no, I didn't have it put together. The universe had it put together. It was
Exactly.
moving the parts around, right? And it gave me this fabulous opportunity. And I could have been, and I don't want to demean this, but had I gone with Carlos, I would have just been another drummer on the road with a good band. I
Exactly.
wouldn't have been able to touch the lives of all these, thousands of kids that I had the opportunity to have conversations with. We had 8 homeless kids live with us who,
Oh, wow.
after my kids grew up, we just took one after the other was, problematic, and they lived with us, and they became lifelong friends and wonderful
Wow.
people. And now I'm still connected with
That's beautiful.
numerous students that have
Yeah.
turned out to be wonderful, and they're in symphony orchestras all over the world. So
Yeah.
is I realized that if I could just learn to step back and let God happen. I'll put it that way in a very
Yeah.
general sense. You could use the universe, the source, supreme, whatever you want to use. But to me, if you let that work through your life, if you let the spirit work through your life, back up, keep your hands off, right? Leave your hands off, back up and let that spirit work through your existence,
Yeah.
then
Allow
beautiful
yourself to be
things can
guided.
happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Just allow
The
yourself to be
guidance
guided.
is yeah,
Yeah.
and not get your ego in. Pull that ego out. Let it stay away. No judgment. Don't allow there to be any judgment about the
Yeah.
circumstance, because just like you with your accident and your upbringing, you just see there was a purpose. There was some purpose to these things happening. And when I look at my own father, it's thank God he did not stay in my life. Oh, I would have been far worse off if he didn't take off. So
Really.
I had to even thank my father for leaving. He would have been a horrible father when I looked at him later in life and said, oh my God, thankfully he left. But I
Wow.
couldn't see that in the moment. I was too
Of
little,
course not.
I was too young. You
Yeah.
only feel the hurt. And so, but you can't see distance. We're incapable of seeing the distance, right? If
Yeah.
we could live our life in our rear view mirror, we'd see how it all is coming together and how there's a
Mm-hmm.
purpose for everything. But we don't have that capacity. We can only feel what's happening right now in this moment. And if we're not very aware or awake, it could feel pretty brutal, pretty tough. And why is
Yeah.
this happening to me? You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's what goes through our head.
Yeah, life is not
And
happening
but
for you at
that's
that
yeah,
point. So life is really like you can look at
yes,
it as either life is happening for you or to you in that kind of
right,
sense, you know. So now I've learned to say, no, life is happening for me and I'm being guided versus, oh,
yeah,
why is this happening to me? You know, that question that a lot of
yeah,
a lot of people are asking themselves, like, you know, am I a, you know, they fall into that victim mentality of
right.
things, and it's
The
sad because
victimhood,
I've been there.
sure,
Yeah, I've
yeah,
been there. I was there. I was a victim most of my life, and I was even called passive aggressive, and I was like, what do you mean? I'm just trying to share my truth and share what I'm going through, and nobody really wants to hear my
right,
shit, you know. And now I
yeah,
look back and I'm
right,
like, oh my god, like, why was I doing that to people? I was literally giving them that negative energy, and they were taking that on, and no wonder they kept like saying, I want to hang out with you. You know what I mean? If you're going to be talking about your problems, I don't want to hang
sure,
out. And now I'm like, when I go through my shadow work, you know, through my darkness, I go into my
right,
little
sure,
cave and I stay away from everybody because I don't want to put that energy on anyone. You know what I mean? Because it's not easy, you know,
right,
especially the stuff that we
absolutely.
go through personally.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
So,
we want it, I think, because we think if they love me, they will accept me sharing all my stuff,
mm-hmm.
and there's only
Yeah,
so much stuff people can handle, right? So if you
exactly.
just keep hammering them with your stuff, they're going to have to back up or they're going to get
Yeah,
swallowed up in your stuff, right? And
yeah,
and people often, we often don't realize that they're trying to protect themselves because they can't get
yeah,
swallowed up in all our stuff. And that's the lesson at the moment
mm,
we should be
yeah,
learning. Wait a minute, let me back off here a little bit because I'm really
mm-hmm.
hammering this person. But that takes maturity, right? We
It
have to
does. It does.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we have to
I'm on that
back
other
up.
side
But
now. Now,
that's yeah.
now I'm on the other side looking
Oh,
at
sure.
people when they come to me, and I'm
Absolutely.
like, you know what? Let's talk about stuff. Let's talk in the light. Okay, well, you could tell me all
Yeah,
your stuff, but let's not judge anyone. Let's not put anybody
right.
down. Tell me your experience. Tell me what you are feeling. So it's kind of like
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
detour them to be able to still express what they're going through, but without being in that victim judgmental, you
Right.
know,
Sure.
space. So it's kind of like I want to be here for you. I want to hold space for you, but let's kind of like unravel this a little different, you know. And I'm learning to do that now, and it's been so challenging, so challenging,
Yeah,
but it's
oh,
beautiful.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's beautiful and it's challenging.
Yeah,
And we also have to recognize that, again, with everybody on a different level, the person who ends up being swallowed up by the other person's stuff hasn't as yet learned how to protect themselves from it.
exactly.
Because there are people, right? You know them, you've met them, you're
Yeah.
becoming one where you surround yourself with the light so that it doesn't affect you and
Mm,
you can still help the person. But also, if you can't help them because you can see with your sight at this point that
yeah.
the person can't be helped unless they go around the block again. They're just, remember the old merry-go-rounds where, you get on the
Yeah.
little horse, it goes up and down to merry-go-rounds going around. And then
Yeah.
at some arcades or some amusement parks, you would try to catch a gold ring that you would put
Hmm.
your hand out, and there was a little, sometimes it was like a clown's arm, and it put out these rings, and you would catch the ring. And if you caught the gold ring, you would get a prize, and you
Really.
would get either another ride or something else. And for me, life is like that, right? We're having
Yeah.
interactions with people, and if we do it right, we get the
Uh-huh.
gold prize. We connect and something is
Exactly.
elevated. If
Mm-hmm.
not, then the other person's hammering us or we're hammering them, and there's no
Uh-huh.
prize. You have to go around again after you've learned a little bit more and then
Yeah.
see if you can elevate this. But it takes the experience to learn to elevate yourself and the other person. Without the
Yeah.
experience, you're just going around the merry-go-round
Around
again,
and around. Yeah, like a
because you
crazy
have
person.
to, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's not wasted because you're
No.
learning little experiences that will tip you over. It's like a tipping point
Yeah.
where in Hinduism it's called samskaras, which are impressions. So you get an impression it might not be strong enough to change your mind about something, but maybe several other ones following will be enough impressions to make you tip in the right direction. And
Right.
so that kind of thing is what we're experiencing constantly, right? To
Mm-hmm.
learn
Yeah,
takes repetition. The repetition is just there for us to get it, right? We get
exactly.
bang, bang, the hammer hits sometimes
Oh, I
a
get
whole
it. I get
bunch,
it. I get it. It's funny
you know,
because in
yeah,
my own personal experience, I became an empath, like very
yeah,
extremely sensitive to everything for like, and this was through my whole like healing journey that I started like really diving into getting healthier at the beginning of almost last year. And becoming an empath, I used to pick up people's energy all the time, and it
sure,
used to drain the heck out of me. I mean, I would go out to a restaurant to eat. 15, 20 minutes later, I'm telling my husband, I'm exhausted. I want to go home. And he's like, what's wrong? What's going on? And I said, I don't know. My energy gets drained constantly and I don't understand why. And as I started getting deeper and deeper into spirituality and really learning all these different things, I realized, wait a second, I have to learn to protect my energy, harness energy from the universe, because there are energy vampires out there. And it's not that they're doing it on purpose, it's just where they're at in their lives, with the things that they've gone through, that
right,
they just suck the heck out of you, and I've learned now to do different things to keep that energy, to harness my energy and keep it for me, and it feels great because I'm not depleted of energy anymore. When I go out, I could actually have fun and enjoy myself and experience more things
right,
now. And this has only been like maybe 2.5, 3 months that I've learned to do this. But again, it was a journey.
right.
Like I had
Okay,
to go through all that experience. I had to go through the pain. I had to go
absolutely.
through the shadow work. I had to go through like really wanting something better and different and to be healthier in every way, even spiritually. That
Absolutely.
now I am reaping that, everything that I did, all the work that I did, and that I'm still doing, because this is forever. You're never going to stop doing the work. You're always doing it.
No,
You know what I mean?
you're always moving. Yes, and I mean what you're expressing to me is very familiar for
Okay.
sure, and we encounter it all the time. And sometimes you physically have to remove yourself, right? Like you were saying to your
Yeah.
husband, I don't know, I have to get out of here.
Yeah.
This idea that it's so oppressive, and sometimes you could see it in a gathering, maybe in your house, where there's
Mhm.
some people who are so intense that you actually physically have to move away. And
Yeah.
sometimes what I do is I start washing the dishes. I'll just,
That's awesome.
the stuff, yeah. I mean, the stuff is going on. And I was, wait a minute, I'm not going to do any good here. So let me go
I'm gonna
wash
go wash the
because,
dishes,
yeah,
put some water
yeah,
in my
I'm just
hands,
absolutely, well,
meditate.
there's a physiological thing that goes with
Mhm.
that. Remember, there's two famous stories. One is from Macbeth, the play, Shakespeare
Mhm.
play, where
Okay.
the Lady Macbeth, because of all the destruction and killing she is basically caused, she's washing her hands, trying to get the blood out of her hands, and she's saying, "Out damn spot, out damn spot." And she thinks that by washing her hands, getting the spot out, is going to relieve her of the psychic pain she's going
Wow.
through. The second one was Pontius Pilate with Jesus. So when he
Mm,
judges Jesus and says, he's going to condemn him to death, but he really feels he's done nothing wrong. And so he asks for a bowl of water and a cloth to be brought.
mm.
So he's washing his hands. He says, something to the effect that his blood, is not on my hands,
Yeah.
or the actions of this just man, are unwarranted to that. But he's trying to wash his hands of this terrible thing that's happening. And in a minor way, it's like if we go wash the dishes because there's too much chaos going on at the dinner table,
Yeah.
basically it's like, I got to wash my hands of this stuff. I got to clean the dishes off because that's going to make me feel
Yep.
better. And so, in a very simple way, it works. It actually
It
works,
does. It does work. Even like
yeah.
taking a shower, if you're going through
Oh, yeah,
something,
absolutely.
jump in the shower and just kind of like close your eyes
Yeah,
and be grateful for that water that's like cleansing you, that is giving you all that beautiful,
absolutely. Yeah,
energy, and just it'll
sure. Yeah.
change literally. By the time you get out of the shower, you are a different person,
Yeah,
completely
yeah,
different.
and in fact, some researchers, I've got it in my book. I don't know if you can remember it, where these researchers having to do with the researching things to do with moral character, and they
Yes.
find people in an office if they're standing by a water fountain. Uh,
Uh-huh.
they feel like if they're talking about something that's maybe morally not very clean, they'll get drinks of water right away, or they'll wash
Uh-huh.
their hands because they want to be cleansed from this kind of what they
Wow.
perceive as morally unhealthy. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, this, Romans said cleanliness is next to godliness. So they're all connected. This idea of cleaning ourselves, to get away from this moral ambiguity or negativity. And we just want to do something physical to manifest this idea we're cleansing ourselves. I mean, it's everywhere
It's
with
everywhere.
all over
Yes,
the
that is
world.
true.
It's yeah. So that's great. That's wonderful.
It
Yeah.
is. It is. I'm gonna take you back a little bit back to your
Okay.
music stuff again.
Sure. Sure.
Can you talk to me on your experience when you were conducting the San Francisco School District Honor Orchestra? Talk to me a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, these honor orchestras are formed in just about every city. And basically they're the best kids from each school, and they
Okay.
come together for a week. And this is, like I say, all over the country they do this kind of thing. They pick the 2 or 3 best kids from every school orchestra and send them to one central school for a week, and they put together a concert in one week. So they have to
Oh
put
wow.
the concert together. They're given the music, and then a conductor is hired to conduct that orchestra. And I was lucky enough to be chosen for one of these sessions. And so the beautiful thing about it, it's an ideal circumstance. And musicians and teachers especially seldom get to have these ideal circumstances where you have these top notch students. Every one of them, with few
Wow.
exceptions, is an excellent student and excellent musician. So you get to see how good it can be,
Mm,
because public school in general, that you don't have
yeah.
perfect, even in my school, it wasn't perfect.
Right.
Some kids who didn't practice, a handful of kids be noisy or something. But in this circumstance, it almost never happens where a kid doesn't
Mm,
practice their part or it gets out of hand, and the group
yeah.
just about never happens. So you're there in this pristine environment, something we seldom have the privilege or opportunity to experience. And all of a sudden, you find yourself communicating with this whole group of kids at a very, very high level, at least in terms of music. And to
Okay.
me, if the person is smart, they're commuting something besides the music. They're commuting something very human and special, something that normally can't be done in a classroom. Not that it's never done, but it's normally more difficult to do, where your minds are meeting, and think of when you're really clicking in a conversation with a person, everything is moving at lightning speed in a
Yeah.
way, and everybody's going up like this, and that's the way that happens. So you
I
can
know.
you can see for that brief time how beautiful this could be. So you're given an idea, almost like a spiritual experience,
I know.
where you touch this spirit at a very high level, either in a meditation or sometimes walking in
Yeah.
the wilderness. You can have it in nature, but this you don't forget, because it touches you very deeply, that kind of spiritual experience, right? And in this, at a more mundane level, but like that, where you can parallel this. No, I didn't get high as a kite like I did in that meditation, but
Yeah.
this was so beautiful. It was such a beautiful
Nice.
experience. To me, that is the magic of things like that. They can happen in other professions, they can
Of
happen
course.
in the arts, even probably business. I mean, probably happens there as well in some way.
Yeah.
But to me, those are, they're the tantalizing things that say it could be like this,
Yeah.
could be like this at a very high level. And to me, it's a pointer. It's a pointer to spirituality and
Mm,
the enlightenment of spirituality. So that to me is the specialness about that. It gives you a parallel kind of, and an opportunity, of course.
that's beautiful. Now, tell me what motivated you to teach humanities, critical thinking, and music at the San Francisco School of Art High School.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I was teaching for almost 30 years music, but I had been, involved in spiritual things for a very long time with, during that entire period. And
Right.
how you are as a spiritual teacher, you want to bring that um, aspect of yourself, that spiritual aspiration, into every aspect of your life if you can, right? Because you recognize this is really the most important thing that I'm doing. And
Mm-hmm.
how can I permeate my whole existence in a way that's acceptable? You don't want to hit somebody over the head with your spirituality. You basically want to
I've
express
done
it
that.
in a way that, yeah, of course, we all have. We all have,
Well,
right?
that's
Yeah,
that's a stage of
absolutely.
like you go through those little stages when you first
Yeah,
get
your
awakened,
ego
right?
is, yeah, oh,
The
look
spiritual
what,
ego.
sure, yeah, it's look what I've got. You want some? Take it,
Like
and that's our
take some of
ego.
this, it's
That's the
good.
spiritual ego.
Yeah.
Absolutely, sure. Yeah. So in my life, I felt the same thing, but I was trying at the end of my teaching career to find ways of incorporating it that would be acceptable to a public school system.
Mm,
So it came in the form of critical thinking, how to teach critical thinking, how to
mm,
teach ethics and philosophy, because that's a secular way of approaching morality and ethics.
mm.
It's a way that it doesn't trample on separation of church and state or trying to bring in some spirituality or anything like that. It's basically saying, here's a way to open this door that's pretty much acceptable to everyone. We all want to be better people. We all want to
Right.
think better. We all want to be able to analyze things fairly and justly. And so that's a first step to an awakening. So, when we have a bunch of kids in front of us, I would have like 30 kids possibly in front of me, and they all had their brain and what they thought about things in their minds. And so I would open the class with three questions: who am I? Why am I here? And where am I going? Now, these are
Mm-hmm.
called humanities questions, basically. And a lot of people have used them or similar, but the main one was, who am I? Because it makes the not just child, adult, anyone, start to dig, right? We start to ask ourselves that question, who am I? And there's a great spiritual teacher that passed away many years ago, Nisargadatta Maharaj, his name was. And he wrote a book called I Am That. And the book, you may know of it, it's a famous spiritual book.
I haven't read it
I Am
yet.
That.
No, I am that.
Wonderful. Just a wonderful book. I Am That. And he is pointing to what we seek. Who am I
Oh,
is the question. And when we dig deeper and deeper and deeper, of course, we find we are all of existence. We are everything. If we are capable of that level of identification, nothing is foreign to us. So our attempt to not judge, because
mm,
why? The other person is me in a different set of clothes.
It's
really,
awful.
so I'm looking at myself. And so his statement, I am that, there is nothing that he is not. And in the probably the best statement in the Bible, either Testament, New Testament, Testament, and one that this sage points to also, is when Moses talked to God, when God at the burning bush tells Moses, take my people out of Egypt. Well, this really means take my people out of ignorance, not just a
Yes.
place. Take my people out of ignorance.
Yeah.
And so Moses says to God, well, I'm just Moses. Nobody's going to listen to me. Who shall I say sent me? To the people. Who's he going to say sent him? And God doesn't say to Moses in this burning bush, what's the burning bush? It's the fire inside you. It's the
Yes.
fire of enlightenment inside you. That's
Mm.
the burning bush. And so God says to Moses, he doesn't say, oh, I'm Lord God, Jehovah, the creative heaven and earth. No, no. He says, I am that I am.
I
What's
am
I
that I
am
am.
that I am? I am
Ooh,
that. I am
goosebumps.
everything. Yeah, there's nothing but
Mm,
God. And so, it's such a beautiful thing
mm,
that these, seers from around the world all identify with this thing. And the
mm.
idea that, we get to that point where we start to realize it. It takes us our whole lives, let's face it, to really
Yeah.
learn the lessons, take our entire lives. But what a beautiful journey it is when you recognize you're on the journey, this final journey of enlightenment, that we're all on it. We might not know it, but sooner
Yeah.
or later, we get the idea. We know it. And that,
Yeah.
it's like a lotus, right? It's opening up this
Mm-hmm.
flower. And it means you can really offer the essence of who you are to the world, right? And isn't that phenomenal? It's just so beautiful. Just keep our
Beautiful.
ego out.
Yeah.
Just got to
No,
keep our ego out of it.
it's funny you mentioned the lotus because that the lotus flower because that's what I chose for the logo of my podcast,
Yes,
and it was
exactly.
a
Yeah,
download. Yeah, it was like a download that says
sure.
me the lotus with the two hands, you know,
Yeah,
and I was like,
it's perfect. It's perfect.
yeah,
Just so
yeah,
beautiful. Yeah,
it is. It's
absolutely.
beautiful.
So, well, we're all on the same trajectory. The path we
Mm-hmm.
choose, which is chosen for us, is individual because we go our way into the forest on our own path, and it's just the beauty of infinite diversity, right? Because if
Yeah.
we say the universe is infinite, that means also we're infinite, but there's also infinite diversity. So we are special in the sense of having our own path and,
Okay.
our own particular personality that we're gifted with to find our own way in. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, when we have that acceptance, then we don't force people to do our thing, like no, many people want to force somebody to do their thing because they say,
Yeah.
this is the truth.
Yeah.
Well, it's their truth, right?
It is.
It's
And a
their
lot of
truth.
time it comes from
Yeah.
fear. A lot of that control, because
Oh, yeah.
I call it control, it's fear based. And I know I kind of lived through it on and off throughout my life. And I was such a control freak because I was in fear and I felt that I always needed to control everything. If not, everything would not be okay, you know? And
Sure.
now, after
Absolutely.
I've gone through all this stuff, I'm like, I don't want nobody to control me. I don't want to control nobody. I just want to be able to do the things I want to do, be who I am or whatever I'm going to be or whatever, and just allow the other person to be themselves also. And the moment that you surrender and you let go of all that fear, life starts happening in ways that you cannot even imagine. I mean, things start like
Yeah.
unraveling and unfolding and things start changing and you start getting more of that beautiful energy coming through, and then the things that you want to create, because we are creators, you know, just like God's source universe, then we start just kind of like opening up like that flower and evolving, you know,
Right.
and that's it,
Right.
you know. Life is beautiful. It doesn't have to be chaotic. It will be, but you don't have to live in that chaos.
No,
You have a
no,
choice.
and that's the
Yeah.
fight. That's the fight, right? We're fighting
Yeah.
this, and in my book, there's a part on free will and the
Mm,
illusion of free will, and now science is catching up with these spiritual teachers who say there is no free will, and we rebel against it. We hate that. In fact, the thought that I
talk to me a
don't
little
have
bit about
free
that.
will.
Yeah, talk to me about that
Sure,
because for
sure,
me, like the things that I've been spiritually learning and all these things talks about how we have free will and we pretty much have the free will to choose whatever we want in life. And then,
yeah,
there are certain entities or whatever that come and support us if something is going to happen, like if the earth is going to get destroyed because somebody wants to just play
right.
stupid, they come in and they kind of interfere a little bit. But then I question, like you wrote in the book, do we really have free will?
Yeah, it's a level of awareness. The
Mm,
concept of free will is one level of awareness. Now, when you ask yourself, what are the benefits of free will from a societal perspective? Well, from a
mm,
societal perspective, it keeps people in line because we can punish them if they're doing the wrong thing. And
right.
we say, you are doing the wrong thing, therefore you
Yeah.
violated this law, therefore I'm going to put you in jail or fine you or do XYZ. We
Right.
also have an ego attachment to punishment because we feel superior to the person who is misbehaving in some way, shape, or form. So
Um,
that's our ego attachment to wanting to punish, right? Now,
well,
what
yeah.
science is, and one we also have to look historically. They used to punish in the 1700s witches by putting
Yes.
them, in a dunking thing, right? Now, one of the things was about the witch. They said, well, you know, if she comes up and she lives, she has the spirit of the devil in her protecting her. If she drowns, she was pure. You know,
Oh my
now,
God.
here you go. And this is
That,
her
that
free
that
will
hits me
somehow
hard.
choosing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that hits me hard
Yeah.
because I literally come from a long lineage of witches on my grandmother's side, and we're, very
Yeah.
connected, intuitive,
Sure.
and
And the,
unfortunately, but
yeah,
because we
but
have
I
so
mean,
much
this
fun.
is right. But this is how crazy things used to be. And then in
Ex-
18th century London, they would hang 13-year-old pickpockets. Kids out there, being a pickpocket. But is this proportionality that you would want, that you're hanging a 13-year-old for picking
That's
some,
insane.
buddy's pop? It's insane. And I'm sure, our future generations will look back at us and say, you guys were insane for doing this
That,
stuff to people, and
no,
what the science, now this is kind of brand new science, but the idea of no free will goes against the grain to so many people.
hmm
But like Robert Sapolsky, who I quote in the book, and others, Robert Sapolsky's from Stanford, and he's a primatologist. He spent 30 years every summer living in Africa, in Kenya, with baboons, in baboon tribes,
Wow.
studying the behavior of baboons. Then he was a biologist also. Then he became a neuroscientist. Well, he's been at Stanford for years and doing research on brain science as a
Mm,
neuroscientist. And he's found that what we perceive of as choice, in other words, we're making a choice. You see chocolate ice cream, you see vanilla ice cream. And I say, I want chocolate ice cream. That's a free choice that I've made. I want that chocolate ice cream. Don't tell me that I didn't choose it. I just did. I just said I want a
hmm
cone of chocolate, not vanilla. Well, Sapolsky found that the synapses in our brain fire the speed of light practically,
hmm
and we aren't aware that we made a choice when we made it, which is inside our brain, which hasn't come to our conscious awareness in our frontal cortex yet.
You're right.
And the reason we made the choice for chocolate rather than vanilla is because our taste buds on our tongue are more susceptible, more sensitive to chocolate ice cream. So when we think we're
Mm,
making a choice, It's a taste bud made the choice, went through our brain, came out of our mouth that say chocolate. And
How
this
funny.
permeates our brain. It goes through everything. Color shirt I'm wearing. I have a blue shirt on. I kind of like the blue shirt more than the red shirt, but my wife tells me, wear the blue one. It matches the color of your eyes.
No,
So my wife's opinion means something to me. I don't think when I'm pulling out of the closet the blue shirt because my wife's opinion means something, I think I like the blue shirt better. Has nothing to
right.
do with I like. It's because my wife put a little thing in my brain that I didn't even recognize, and I grabbed that blue shirt. Well,
That is true.
extrapolate, expand this to everything we do, and we realize there's a little synaptic firing going on in our brain, which is telling us what to do, telling us the person to like, telling us if we're happy or sad. It's all going on up here, and for me, old spiritual teachers and the very deep ones say there's no free will. Because what is our ego doing? Our ego is not our true self. Our ego is our psychological makeup that we've
Mm,
collected to be our personality through conditioned experiences. So all the memories we've got stored in our brain are conditioned experiences from the time we could open our eyes and see our mother. And
mm,
from that time on, and maybe before, when the baby's in the womb, what do they say? Be careful what you do when you're pregnant, right?
that.
Pregnant women now, for the first time in history, are told, don't drink alcohol, don't smoke cigarettes, don't take drugs. It affects the fetus. Well, these are
Exactly.
conditions, you know, and I would teach kids when I taught elementary school. These were crack babies in Oakland, California.
Oh, wow.
And I had a whole classroom, and half of them were crack babies. And they could not behave because their brains were damaged by the cocaine when their
Yeah,
mothers were taking the cocaine. Now, at another time before we knew this, these kids would be called bad. They were bad and misbehaving all the
yeah,
time. They weren't bad and misbehaving. They were affected by the brain damage that was caused them when their mother took
exactly.
cocaine. Did the mother know? No. She was
Yeah,
craving cocaine. She didn't know it would cause her baby damage. She was ignorant. So it's
exactly.
why did Jesus say, on the cross, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. Don't punish them like they know what they're doing. And so let's face it, your parents, when they got a divorce, they didn't know the effect it would have on you. They were just pissed off at each other and they're going to get a divorce. My father, the
Definitely.
same way. He didn't have a brain in his head about what effect he would have on me, yet he traumatized my life. So that's why we have no free will. We think we like it because we can blame somebody and feel superior.
Right.
That's our ego. Blame somebody else, feel superior to them. And so when we finally realize that, we will be able to love the other as ourself,
That's true.
because we
That is
realize
true.
this poor fellow or woman has gone through this stuff and has been damaged by it, and it's not her fault. And so it doesn't mean we leave a criminal out of jail just because we're being nice. They might have to stay there to protect us from them, right? So
That's
we,
true.
we might have to keep somebody out of society because they're dangerous to us. But it's not because we despise them. It's not because we hate them or we feel superior. It's because we're
Hmm.
protecting society. We have to protect
That's true.
ourselves to live, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, free will to these folks is out the window. And for me, I feel the same way because it allows me not to judge other people so quickly. If I realize they just are ignorant, they don't know what they're doing. And this goes
That
for
is true.
me too. I hope somebody looks at me that way, doesn't blame me. I say,
I
he's just
know.
ignorant.
We are. Sometimes we are so ignorant to everything, and
Absolutely, of course. We don't.
you know,
I mean, I'm ignorant about fixing cars or doing this. I'm just ignorant. I don't know. Ignorant doesn't mean bad. It means you don't know.
no,
That's all.
you just don't
Stupid
know.
means bad. But yeah. So
That's so
it depends
true.
on whether, I don't want to call
But
anybody stupid. I call them ignorant.
yeah, we don't want to use that lower frequency
No,
word.
no, we don't. Yeah,
Oh, that's funny. So talk to me
yeah.
really quickly about your interest into metaphysics and how did that influence the work that you're doing personally with philosophy and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think because and actually because of the pandemic. The funny thing was
Mm,
I had to, well, it happened before the pandemic. I had to stop teaching because I stopped teaching music a little bit before. They kept calling me back. And finally, I
right.
decided I'm retired. They're calling me back to teach music, but I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do what I feel like I was intended to do beyond music, which was these philosophy classes and critical thinking and ethics
Yeah,
classes. I love doing it, but I didn't have a teaching credential for it. So the kids loved the classes, they filled them up, but the school said, well, we love you teaching this, but because you don't have a credential, the school district is not going to let you teach them anymore.
okay.
So I felt bad and I felt resentful because the kids loved the class and I loved teaching
No,
the class. And I didn't, but again, see, here's my ignorance. I didn't understand there was something else for me,
yeah.
almost like going all the way back to the Santana incident, right? I didn't
Exactly.
see, yeah, there was not, I couldn't see there was something else for me. And it's because, guess what? I'm not farsighted enough or spiritually sighted to see it. So I
Right.
just got kind of resentful and I left and I was, kind of moody. And then bang, the
Good.
pandemic hit. So I couldn't teach anyway. The schools closed. And so I was home and I couldn't play music because all the venues shut down for playing
Yeah,
music. I couldn't go out and play music. So I'm sitting there trying to figure out what am I going to do? And all of a sudden, I thought of writing a book and about the things I was concerned about. This, trajectory of the
that's this
human
book.
life, from one thing to the other, from being a survive. And it was about survival from physiological point of view, from your cells, an animal point of view, up through a psychological perspective, your ego's heavily involved, to a spiritual perspective or a metaphysical perspective, where we go up through these levels of awareness from pure ignorance, except just how something feels, up through an analysis where we start be able to look at it from our psychological perspective, and up through finally a spiritual view of our existence. And
Right.
so it took 2 years, the whole pandemic pretty much, and then I finally got it published. But I just was marveling at looking back at my life, seeing how I have a pattern. I do something, feels good for a while, and then for whatever reason, I can't do it anymore. And then I resent the fact I can't do what's comfortable because I'm now comfortable at this level. I like doing it. I want to continue doing it. I'm comfortable, but the universe has a different plan. It's a
Oh,
joke.
yeah.
So it's if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. You know,
Oh, yeah.
but he's got a different or she's got a different plan for you, but you don't know about it yet. So for
Exactly.
me, it's with all the, it's everybody, right? You got a
Yeah.
plan. Here's my plan, and I'm going to make it up and I'm going to stick to it, and nothing's going to change my plan. Well, guess what? Life happens when you're making plans. And
That is
so
true.
thankfully that happened for me with this book and being here with you. And so
No,
I'm so happy that you invited me on your program,
of
and
course.
I am extremely grateful that everything that's come my way in my life, because I feel very blessed and in love with life. So that's where I am at this point in my life. I hope I'm not so self-content at this point. I get another big hammer on the head to do something.
She
you
does
know,
what
but
what's next?
yeah, yeah, what's next? Exactly. What's next? So as long as it lasts, I'm grateful. Put it
That's
that way.
beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So, Jerry, we are coming to the end of our show here, and it's been such an honor, such a pleasure to have this conversation with you and share with the audience all your all the stuff that you've done and your music and the philosophies and all the spiritual things that we talked about. So I'm really grateful to have you here. And one of the things that I like to do at the end of my podcast is to ask three closing questions. So the first one, Jerry,
Sure.
is for our listeners who are inspired by your journey, where can they find more information about your work and connect with you?
Sure. The easiest way is jerrypannone.com, my website, jerrypannone.com. And I have drop down menus, and one shows my book, the other is some podcasts that might be on there, and so on. And then there's a contact drop down. And at the bottom, you could just see how you can connect with me. Love to hear from any of your participants, your guests, and your audience. And they can just contact me there. That's the easiest way. Um, I have an Instagram at, for my book. It's actually Survival Why We Do What We Do. And I occasionally post things there. But the best way to contact me is basically the website, jerrypannone.com. And the book, I'm kind of in the midst of taking the rights back from the publisher because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that I can spread it much more quickly through different venues, and
Right.
so if you write me, I have copies of the book myself. If anybody would like the book, but
Mm-hmm.
it will be probably available in a month or so from a different publisher. Right now, it's on Amazon and
Mm-hmm.
I guess Barnes and Nobles, couple other ones, and you can get them through local bookstores if they want to order it. But Amazon's probably the easiest. And there's also an audio book, and through Spotify, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a ebook through Amazon as
Beautiful.
well. So yeah, so I could kind of get in touch and giving you more information through my website, but love to hear from anyone on the website. That's the other way to do it, of course.
Good. Beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
that's probably it. Mhm.
Okay. Cool. And what is one piece of advice you would give to someone starting out in the field of music education?
Oh, good. Music education. Um, Willie Nelson uh, said something to an interview. I think it was his 80th birthday. And I just turned 80, and so I think I'll steal
Oh.
Willie's quote. And um, the reporter said, "Well, Willie, you turned 80 years old. You have a lot of advice, I'm sure, for young people." He said, "Well, what would you tell your 80-year-old self?" Or pardon me, your 19-year-old self. And Willie said, "Just shut up." And and I think the thing about just listening, um, it's what I would tell anybody's younger year old self. Of course, just listen, because so often, and it's not, this doesn't include all the introverts who never want to talk, because they're talking in their head
Mhm.
oftentimes. Even if we're an introvert, sometimes we're having running commentary going on about what somebody else is saying, and we're not listening. And I think this ability to uh, uh, do constructive listening, when we're really actively listening to somebody, we're doing a couple of things with that. We're giving, through our own vibration, we're giving the other person, the speaker, the sense that we are paying attention to them. Therefore, we're caring about them. And I'm not talking about a 2,000 lecture hall somewhere at a college. I'm just talking about when we're connected with somebody. It could be a classroom, of course, but most of the time it's one other person that we're listening to what they have to say. Therefore, we're caring about the person. And that ability, I find the wisest people have. You know that when you connect with people and someone really listens to you, there's a wisdom that's coming through. And in our younger selves, oftentimes we don't have the time to listen. We've got too much to say to
Oh
listen.
yeah.
And that's all, of course, that's all our ego, right? And that's where that phrase young and dumb comes from.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
That
and
is so
other
true.
phrase, well, hire them while they still know everything. And,
Mm-hmm.
and so this, this idea that we want to show off what we have to say and seem clever. And at the very end of my book, I have a quote from Rumi, the poet, the Arabic poet, and Rumi says, "Yesterday I was clever and I tried to change the world. Today I am wise and I'm trying to change myself." And I think, this encompasses so much of our activity. We want to be clever. We want to say the sharp thing. We want to outspeak the other person in a group or look like we're smarter somehow. This is going on in our brain all the time because it goes back to survival. If I'm stronger, well, I got a better chance of surviving. If I'm smarter and I can prove it, I've got a better chance of surviving. So it all goes back to fundamentally fear and insecurity. When you think about it, if you have to think about outdoing somebody all the time to survive, we're wrapped up in that fear. And we have to outdo them some way. But that's not the spiritual answer, right? The spiritual answer, go deep within you, love that person, see if you can love that. And we love them by starting out
Yeah.
listening to what they have to say, because our love can grow for them. And so I think, the younger musician has to listen with their ears for the music. So listen carefully to what you hear in the music and also in the other person. Whether it's the performer of the music, whether it's your friend, whether it's the teacher, whether it's a little child on the street, listen carefully to what they have to say, because they're your teacher. That's your teacher. And I think, if I have to do over again, which I probably will in another life or
Who
something,
knows?
I,
Who
you know,
knows?
I hope I'll listen. I hope I learned to listen faster than
Mhm.
I did this
That's
time
funny.
around. So,
I could so
yeah,
relate with you. I could relate with you on that because I was always told since I was a kid, you never listen. And I'm
yeah,
just like, whatever.
yeah,
And now,
yeah,
finally, that I'm listening, my spirit guides
yeah.
are like, and my ancestors, they like, oh my gosh, she's finally
Sure,
listening. Yes,
she's finally listening, right?
we got a
Yeah,
winner.
yeah, yeah,
But listening is very
yeah. No,
important. Yeah, very,
absolutely.
very important.
Yeah. So I mean, that's like the one thing I maybe because I'm a blabbermouth myself, I talk too much, but that idea that okay, I'm seeing this in myself. I'm seeing this weakness in myself where should listen to what they have to say, and you will learn something.
Yeah.
Um, and so often that quiet person in the room is often the wisest person in the room.
Mm,
And so, if we make that effort, it usually pays off for us.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
Cool, cool. So
I,
as we wrap up, is there anything else you would like to share with your audience that would, that they can uncover that you haven't uncovered yet? anything that you probably want to just kind of put out there and then, talk about it?
I think we well, at this age I'm forgetting what I even said. So I don't know if I said it before, but I I want to I guess reiterate that we're all going to get there. It might
Yeah,
not be, like Martin Luther King says, he says we're all going to get to the mountain. I might be not get there with you, but what he meant in this time, in this lifetime, I might not get there with you. And so the thing to remember is we're all going to get there. Everybody's going. The evolution of the cosmos is all coming to that fruition. We're all spiritual beings or spiritual entities, and we will all get there because the getting there is becoming awakened. It's awakening to who we are. And we are all going to get to know who we are at some point. And so I think if we just remember that, it's going to give us a little patience, and it's also going to help us to love one another because we realize that's me in a different costume.
yeah,
And so when that, begins to happen with us, God, I mean, life becomes so beautiful, right? I mean,
yeah.
from your perspective,
Oh my God,
doesn't
yes.
life become absolutely beautiful? Yeah. And
Yeah,
so it's paradise here. We just don't know it. We're
exactly.
unaware of it because we're stuck in one way or
Mhm.
another. We're stuck, and we don't realize, it's really paradise right now, and we
Yeah,
just have to become aware of that reality. I just end my thing with Krishnamurti, the famous sage said, "I'm happy because I don't care what happens." And he lived totally within his enlightenment. And so, because he was spiritually totally awakened, then he was always blissful.
yeah.
Things could happen around, chaos can be circling around him, but he was living in that spot in himself that was awakened and enlightened.
Mhm.
So he knew what it was all about, and he lived in that spot of knowing. So I think, that's the direction we're all going in. And I don't think it's hubris. I don't think it's presumption. I think it's reality. I think
Yeah,
we're all going to get there. And
we all will, sooner or later.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it really, what does it mean? It just means going within ourselves, and it
Yeah,
doesn't have to go anywhere. We're always there. We just have to awaken to it, right? And
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
process. And there's no way to rush it. We're just,
Mm.
experiencing as much of it as we can at this point.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's what they say, as
Thank you
within, so
so
without.
much,
Of course.
Jacqueline. Yeah.
Of course. You're welcome.
Thank
And
you
I want
so
to
much. I
add,
really had a good time.
yeah, I
Sure.
did too, but I do want to add a little bit to the audience. Like, I just want to say, and, listen, get out of your way, allow life to happen, and don't judge anything. Just allow yourself
Absolutely.
to really dive deep into your inner self, and know who you are, know thyself, and just trust the universe,
Right.
trust life, trust that everything's going to be okay, because it will be. We've gone through our stuff, and here we are still, and we know that we're going to be better, and we're just going to now be able to enjoy life in such a different way than we were so programmed to be before. But now we have awakened, and it's beautiful, because life is great, life is beautiful, it's just blissful. So thank you, Jerry, for being on the show. And, hopefully we'll do another one, because I still have so much more that I want to unravel with you, and ask you so many more questions.
Sure.
But this has
Love
been
to.
so much fun. Thank you. This has been so much fun, and I could literally
Yeah.
talk to you for hours. So thank you.
Well, I've had a great deal of fun myself too, Jacqueline. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.